what's good, people? Izzy Max here, back again. I know you just heard me probably yesterday, but we're in for the MDL pregame, week 3. Ignore that week 2. That's the only thing I didn't fix. But anyway, I am here with Dan. What's going on?
Not too much. Thanks for having me back again this week.
Oh, for sure. This has been super fun for us, and we're going to attempt to not reveal too much, but if we do, prep better or build better. Sorry. Here we go. Dan, why don't you go ahead and start us off? Go ahead and with the transactions.
All right. I think I'll start from the top this week since we started from the bottom last week.
Go for it.
The Rapidash for the Audino. Matt just yelled at Hunter while we were recording our video because Hunter said no one likes Rapidash with Horn Drill, and Matt says I'm going to drop it because of you, and that's really the only reason I see behind it. Doesn't really seem that important to me. Any thoughts on that transaction?
Audino's not a fairy type? That's about it. But I mean, he already has Grimmsnarl, so I think this is just like a who gives a shit kind of trade.
Yeah.
I kind of like Rapidash more, but whatever.
Yeah. I didn't see either of them coming for him this season, and I don't see Audino coming much at all.
No,
but we'll see.
Yeah, no. Next up, we got Charles dropping Licky for Manectric. I mean, now he has a Lightning Rod user next to Corviknight. I mean, let's be honest, Licky wasn't doing anything.
I think Manectric is a useful Pokemon, whereas Licky isn't, even with Cloud9. So I do like this transaction because it makes a switch for something that he could bring.
Yeah.
And also anyone who has a powerful electric type, it makes them think at least about the Manectric in prep, even if he's not showing up. Mm-hmm. And if he does show it, then they're not going to be launching free Thunderbolts into his team. So
right.
I think on the whole, it's a positive.
Yeah, taking a note from the game that I just played with Ryan, do not click Thunder Wave with your Lipard if you have Manectric on the other side. Next.
Yep. Up next, we got Hector with the Weezing and the Poltergeist. So I don't know exactly what the Poltergeist is going to do here. I see it potentially the weak armor, weakness policy set sometimes. But I view this as addition through subtraction for his team because the Weezing is neutralizing gas. It was always going to be more of a negative for his team than for other teams because he's a very ability-focused team. Like, everyone in the team wants to use their ability. So I think the fact that Weezing is no longer on this team makes it better, even if Poltergeist doesn't add a whole lot. And I do see some things here and there that it could do. What are your thoughts on this one?
Kind of the same thing, but for a different reason. Poltergeist isn't weak to ground. His team has a very big problem with ground and rock Pokemon. And, like, Poltergeist isn't the most bulky thing in the world, but like it can at least maybe live a ground move to where Weezing really couldn't and the rest of his team kind of can't. So I really like this one. And Poltergeist is one of those Pokemon, like next to a Persian, you fake out, you maybe get a Shell Smash off, you max, and then you kind of go in. On the other way, you do have Beat Up with the Persian, so you are going to be able to get those big weak armor hits off with a huge speed, and then just clicking, what is it called, stored power, and just neutering some big threats. So I really like it. Next up, we have Hunter dropping Vikavolt for Dusknoir. Yeah, Dusknoir is a better Trick Room setter than Behem. I really like Vikavolt as a Trick Room option, but I know he just picked up Thundurus, so this is kind of a neutral. From last week to this week, I feel like his transactions have kind of just neutralized themselves into a happy medium. I'm not blown away. I don't think it made his team necessarily better. It definitely didn't hurt. If anything, he is kind of in the positive, but just in my eyes, it's just kind of a neutral 2-week transaction. What do you think?
I kind of agree. I think there's going to be some discussion whether it's better to have Dusclops and Vikavolt or Dusknoir and Thundurus, because that's sort of where we are after week 1. Like, which one is better? I could see arguments in both directions, but Dusknoir just isn't nearly as bulky as Dusclops. It's not going to live as many hits, but it can also run something like a Mental Herb. So there are going to be some weeks where this is better, but there will also be some weeks where he really wishes he had that Dusclops Vikavolt set.
Yeah, for sure.
That's really about all I have from it. But Up next, I'm actually gonna talk about a group of transactions all at once because they're all pretty interrelated, I think.
Yeah, hit these three and I'll just take the last one.
Yeah, so we've got, first off, Jess and Burst. Burst traded Togetic to Jess, who got Togetic again because, obviously, for Rhyperior. So those combine with Burst dropping Lycra Rock and picking up Trevenant, and Jess dropping Kartana and picking up Stakataka. I feel like, on the whole, Jess's team became very Trick Room focused and got a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's going to be very difficult to deny Trick Room against a team that has Follow Me, Fake Out, a Trick Room setter that's immune to Taunt, the bulkiest Trick Room setter in the game, and the Trick Room setter in Mimikyu that can't die to any single hit.
Yep.
So she's going to get Trick Room up a lot of the time, if not all the time. And I feel like her team gets better because of that. Her fast mode is basically just her Hail, which is a middling fast mode because base speed 55 doubled still isn't going to be massively.
It outspeeds Dragapult by 1.
Yeah, it's going to outspeed Dragapult by 1, I guess, but
Other Scarfers, just outspeed it.
Yeah, so it's not the fastest thing in the world, but it will be decent for her.
But base 55 can flex into Trick Room, so.
Yes. So I would agree with that. So it's got some flexibility, but she's a Trick Room team now.
Mm-hmm.
And she does have a very consistent set of Trick Room options, and it's going to be hard to prep for each of them.
Right.
Burst wanted more power, so he got the Rhyperior. Wanted a Trick Room setter, so he picked up the Trevenant. Part of me just thinks he would have been better off if he was the one that dropped the Feeny for the Stakataka and accomplished basically the same thing. But I see where he's coming from, but I don't think that I think this trade probably makes his team more his style, but I don't think it necessarily makes it better because he gave up a premier tier 2 option that fills a unique role for a generic like tier 2 beater.
Yeah. Well, he did say in the notes that he is pivoting more towards a low to middling speed with both Tailwind and Trick Room options. So I get it, and I like Trevenant as a Trick Room setter. It's decently bulky. You just got to be careful with those fire dark moves. But
I also like Trevenant. I do think Trevenant is underrated by a lot of people in the league. So I can see it operating decently. But I mean, just reading some of the reactions to the trade, when you apologize to the people that your trade partner is going to have to play in the future, I just can't like rationalize thinking that you won the trade.
Yeah, well, one big thing I think is his overall transaction plan is going to last a couple weeks, and
he does have to buy.
Yeah, and I just hope it pans out quick enough to not so much save his season because we're just going to be in week 3, but like I hope it pans out quick enough to where he can start picking up wins.
Yes, I would agree with that. But why don't you tell us a little bit about Toxic's plan here?
So, lastly, Toxic dropped Reuniclus for Conkeldurr. So you drop a Trick Room setter, which I believe is his only setter, for a Trick Room Mon. He said this will make sense after next week because he is in a bye week, so he is doing a 2-week kind of transformation here.
Is he in a bye week?
Yes.
I don't think he's in a bye week.
Is he not?
I thought it was Burst and Matt have the bye this week. Maybe I'm crazy.
Ooh, that is right. I think Toxic has it next week. Well, he's not setting Trick Room next week. So I don't know. I really don't know. I like Conkeldurr as a Mon. And it can kind of operate outside of Trick Room with like super strong Mach Punches. Like Iron Fist Choice Band Mach Punch does a shit ton to anything. But I like it better with a Trick Room setter.
Does Carbink set Trick Room?
Oh, it does. Not greatly, but it does.
Okay.
I did forget about that. Yeah, so I mean, sure, that makes sense. I like Reuniclus better. but Reuniclus is more of an offensive setter to where Carbink is kind of passive and you can just kind of work around it. So we'll have to see what it does. I don't know. What do you think about it?
If this is part of a multi-week plan, I could see it going really well. But I just think it's something that was a little over budget in tier 2 for something that's a little over budget in tier 2.
Yeah.
So I think it's a neutral move if he picks up another better setter. But if he doesn't switch up setters, I don't think this is great.
Oh, for sure. Or at least something to help the Carbink set. But whatever. Moving on. First week. Go ahead, Dan.
All right. So we've got Dina and Jess, which is going to be a pretty important matchup for both of them. Dina's sitting at 1-1 and Jess is at 0-2. You don't want to fall into an 0-3 hole this early in the season, and although 1-2 is better, you really don't want to fall down there either when you haven't played Matt yet within the division from Dina's point of view.
Yep.
So I think this is sort of a must-win for both of them. I picked Rotom Wash and Incineroar as the two main options. I think Rotom Wash has a decent matchup into a lot of what Jess does. Like, Rotom Wash, just generally speaking, is a problem. And if it's running a Will-O-Wisp set, I could see that doing a lot because a lot of her options are physical. Like, outside of the Slowbro, everything is physical. I mean, Togekiss, I guess, and Vanillux, but...
Yeah, Dragonite's kind of mixed.
Yeah, I guess you could run a mixed Dragonite. But I do see Will-O-Wisp on Rotom Wash. Right, the Vanillux. But Will-O-Wisp is going to be a big deal out of Rotom Wash, and it hits a lot of things decently well. But from Jess's side, I think the Incineroar is going to be really important because I think she has to bring it, but she has to play well with it because you don't want to have Intimidate Incineroar trigger an Articuno.
Right.
But you do need the Intimidate Incineroar if Dina's able to stall Trick Room and then just put out late game Cinderace. Like that, and even in Trick Room, like Jess might have the best Trick Room mode in the league now, but Dina's got to be up there because Escavalier is not a slouch.
No.
Runerigus hits pretty hard, and Clefable exists on that team, and those all you want to be able to hit with Intimidate and Fake Out. So I do think that those are going to be the two key mons for this matchup. What are your thoughts?
So I was going to actually cop out and just go Draco's or Arctozolt again, but I think there's some hidden stuff there, so I'm going to kind of leave it. But I do think this is going to be a Trick Room-esque matchup, either denying or setting. So I just picked the two premier Trick Room Pokemon that each of these coaches have in the Runerigus and the Stack Attacker. Runerigus is pretty much going to be there spreading Will-O-Wisps and denying Trick Room, I believe. Because even if Escav can come in and kind of sponge up some of these hits from the Stack Attacker, your Escav's going to be very, very damaged because Stack Attacker will underspeed it. And like Stack Attacker can do some decent damage. So I do think this is going to be
Room service Escav. That's
oh my god, that would be hilarious.
we're gonna race to the bottom here.
Oh my god. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be a Trick Room oriented match. Like I said, whether denying or trying to set. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit with this one. It's going to be a good game. These are the two females in our league, so it's going to be kind of funny. I know. I know Jess.
My two victims.
Yeah, I know Jess was when we were randoming the divisions, told me to put her in the same division as the other girl. So I was like, hey, sure, why not, whatever. So that happened. Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a good game. Much like most of Dina's games and Jessica's, it's going to be a lot coming down to positioning. But yeah, moving on. Oh, it's just you. Here you go.
So you're playing Grant this week in one of the more experienced players against one of the newer players, but both of them have teams that were rated as in that tier of top 4 teams as being some of the best teams in the league. So I think it's a very interesting matchup, potentially a clash of styles. But on Grant's side, I think the Azumarill is going to be his most important option because it hits a lot of the things on your side. Like, just looking at Fairy and Water Stab, it hits Dracovish, it hits Blacephalon, it hits Gigalith, it hits Umbreon, it hits Hawlucha, and it hits Sandslash. And it's got some decent coverage options as well. And I think it does very well against Umbreon, which I have as the most important thing on your side, because Grant's team is almost all special. So I think Umbreon as a special sponge that just sits there and launches Snarls or other things that are similar is going to be pretty effective in this matchup. So I am not sure if Grant brings a Azumarill, but I think he should, and if he does, it does well into your team. But I am a bit more confident that you do bring Umbreon because you sort of need it against his potential Sun mode options. But what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, so I've already kind of started prepping, just doing some rough calcs and just building a rough draft. Azumarill is a problem other than my Lele. Like, he can't Belly Drum and Aqua Jet, and then Azumarill is relatively slow and not the bulkiest thing in the world. But no, it definitely does give my team some problems if there would be some like speed control stuff. But Umbreon, I agree with you, is very important. It not only nullifies Sableye, it does, well, I brought it against Ryan. Yawn, Snarl. It's annoying. That's pretty much all it is. But I look forward to this one. Like, I've already talked to Grant. He's pretty excited about it. Me being one of the better players in the league and with some of the most experience. And Grant, like you said, being one game into competitive Pokemon.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see what young blood has against someone who's experienced and kind of knows what they're doing. But I don't expect him to just completely fold. I do expect a good matchup.
Yeah, who knows? Could end up like our match in the Shadow League during my first league.
Explosion wheezing next to Runerigus. Heck yeah. Oh, man. We ain't talking about that. All right, next up.
No. Next match.
We have Toxic versus Hunter. This is going to be a really good game. Both these guys, similar to Jess and Dina, both these guys need to pick up a win. Alternatively, both of these don't have a win. But the mons I picked are the Dusknoir, which is the new pickup for Hunter, and the Blastoise for Toxic. Blastoise is kind of a weird pick for me. I was going to go Crook, but Hunter has a rain mode, and Crook really doesn't want to be in that rain mode with any of these guys. But Blastoise is a little bit different. If you could deal with the Thundurus, and maybe like a Thunder Punch Metagross, there's nothing that really can kill the Blastoise, and I think like the G-Max Cannonade is going to be huge into chipping off some of that Metagross. If you get a Shell Smash off, Blastoise does get like Dark Pulse and things like that, and I think it does match up really well. You can run Rain Dish. You could be super bulky with Fake Outs and Yawns and Icy Winds. I just feel like this mon can be a whole lot of things, but it's going to come down to Toxic picking which one is best. And then alternatively, Toxic's team doesn't really want to be in Trick Room anymore. Like, there is the Conkeldurr, but Conkeldurr's not doing anything to Dusknoir. Frostmoth isn't as slow as you would like. No idea what Grapplock does. Magmortar is decently slow. I'd like to see it come, and then Carbink doesn't really do any damage. But alternatively, on Hunter's side for his Trick Room mode, you have the Snorlax. Dusknoir itself has good offensive stats. Behem can be offensive. Heck, Room Service Metagross, why not? So I do think there are a lot of options on both sides, but I think these two mons are going to be quintessential in deciding what options these two teams go for. What are your thoughts?
So when you were talking about the Blastoise, you said as long as something deals with the Thundurus, and that's sort of why Thundurus is my choice, because there's not a lot on his team that does effectively deal with the Thundurus. Like maybe the Dragapult, which is why I picked it on Toxic side, but even that, like, you don't want to launch a Max Ghost or a Max Dragon into it because you're just going to buff it if it's maxed.
Yep.
If you don't pick up the KO. And it's going to hit very hard and maybe start airstreaming and be faster. And you can't bring Crocodile because you don't want to buff it. And I guess Togedemaru next to Blastoise means you can get Blastoise up, but it also probably has Max Knuckle. Like, I don't know. I just think the Thundurus is his best offensive threat, even better than Metagross this week. But that's just my base thoughts. And then the Dragapult, I think Airstreams from the Dragapult into whatever's next to the Thundurus, and then stalling out the Max that way while remaining faster could be the best option. But I do think the Dragapult as an answer to Thundurus is something he's going to have to figure out the effective way to leverage that potential answer, because it's really his best answer to Thundurus, and it's like even at best with it.
I'm calling it now. If we see Scarf Water Spout with a Life Orb Dragapult as a lead, I am a god. But we potentially could.
That would be fun. I would like to see that one game.
That'd be hilarious. I think this is going to be a good game. It's very key for both of these guys to come out with a win. But moving on, go ahead. This is going to be Johnny and Dark.
So looking at John and Dark, I think Dracozolt is the easy pick on Dark side, because if you look into John's team, let's just say it's a normal Dracozolt. It's got max Airstream. You max it. It hits Rillaboom. It hits Volcarona. It hits Suicune. Comfey's not bulky enough. It can hit Regirock if it's got max ground. Hits Hitmonlee. It hits Mandibuzz. Hits Credilli. Doesn't really hit Aurorus as much. Hits Dugtrio and hits Fletchinder. So it hits everything except Regirock. Like, I think it OHKOs everything except Regirock and Aurorus on this team if it's maxed. Which is why I picked Regirock and considered picking Aurorus this week, because he needs to survive against the Dracozolt and hit it back, because the Dracozolt's gonna do damage this week. Like, it just hits everything so hard. And that was just sort of my super top level look at it. Like, this Dracozolt's going to be an issue this week, and Regirock and Aurorus are the two answers. But what are your thoughts?
So I did pick Aurorus. I do think it is going to be kind of an issue. It hits a lot of what Dark is trying to do. You know, it hits the Togetic, or hits the Togekiss. Can hit the Dracozolt like it does run Max Quake. Chandelure, Rock Stab. Milotic, I think it gets Freeze Dry. Scizor, which is why it's up here. I'll get to that. Hippowdon doesn't want to take it. Roserade doesn't want to take it. Uxie's bulky, but oh well. Aurorus, I do think, is going to be kind of important. Also, it is a weather denier. We have seen Dark really utilize that Hippowdon. But alternatively, I actually think Scizor is going to be super important here. Outside of the Volcarona, for the same reason that you have Dracozolt, it hits really everything. Bug Stab for Rillaboom. Suicune, sure. Comfey, no, it dies. Regirock, it takes chunks. Hitmonlee, this thing gets Flying Stab. Credilli, Aurorus, Fletchinder's Fletchinder. But I don't know. I think this is when we start seeing Dark use the Scizor and really put it in positions to kind of clean up.
So I'm not sure about that, because that would mean that Dark has to gen Pokemon again, and I'm not sure if that's going to happen. So Dracozolt is in his team of 6, so it's probably going to come.
Fair enough. I will give you that one. But no, this is going to be a fun match. I really do think so. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. What do we have coming up next?
I believe it's me. So it's going to be you versus Charles. Charles off the back of a very good win last week, and you still undefeated, beating the two women in the league. Had to put that in there. But for the key mons, I feel like is going to be kind of Garchomp and Gastrodon. Gastrodon kind of a counter to Garchomp in a way, but Garchomp really just deals with a lot of the things you see here, and it usually does have fire coverage, either in the Fire Fang or maybe like a Tech Fire Blast. But you have Naganadel, Heatran, Corviknight. Liepard can't Thunder Wave you, but it can Charm you, so it's going to be kind of an issue. Mudsdale was going to be my other option, but Mudsdale kind of runs into issues with like the Prim and the Tangela. Garchomp really doesn't want to hit Aromatisse. Heliolisk dies to it. Eldegoss is Eldegoss. I don't really know what it does yet. And then the Manectric doesn't want to deal with the Garchomp. So I think if you're able to get this thing in maybe behind a Tangela or next to a Prim or the Tornadus, I really think Garchomp's going to put in more work than it already is. But then on Charles' side, other than the decent weakness to Garchomp, Gastrodon looks really, really good. It doesn't really take a whole lot from Prim unless you're carrying that energy ball, which you probably should. But there is things like Rindoberry, and then Charles does have things to deal with the Prim. Arcanine doesn't want to be in front of a Gastrodon. Colossal doesn't want to be. Caparaja doesn't want to be. Tangela is an issue. Luxray doesn't want to. I just feel like if he builds the Gastrodon correctly in like special bulk, physical bulk, and offense, this thing's just going to sit on the field and be so annoying. Gastrodon was for series like 1 through 5. It was just sitting there being annoying. Sometimes it was a max option, just getting those special defense boosts and just sitting there with recover. So I think you're going to have your hands full with the Gastrodon. No doubt I think you'll be able to deal with it, but Charles is very smart in his play. I know you didn't see him last season, but in season 1, he was very meticulous and strategic in the way he played and really knew what he was doing. So I do think you're going to have your hands full with this one. What are your thoughts?
I do think that this is a very interesting matchup. I know you're probably going to pick Garchomp every week for me. But yeah, there are a couple different sets that I am very interested in potentially busting out this week to see what works. So I'm just going to leave it at that for now. But I do think that the Garchomp likely has a role, and the Gastrodon is something that I will be hard prepping for. Because I don't really think his tier 1s are quite as threatening into my team because they both just have a really negative matchup against Garchomp.
Oh, yeah, no, they 100% do. Also, don't sleep on Cryogonal. I have no idea what it does, but it's a freaking Cryogonal.
So it Icicle Spears under Trick Room into Mudsdale to trigger multiple times the stamina buff, and then weakness policy as well.
Fantastic. Well, actually, couldn't Eldegoss do that too with Bullet Seed?
Yeah, I guess Eldegoss could do that too. But
hell yeah.
It's not Cryogonal.
Hell yeah. All right, moving on. Go ahead. You got Hector and Ryan.
So Hector and Ryan is a really interesting matchup. I think the Poltergeist move is decent for Hector, but it also doesn't have a single move that isn't not very effective into Moltres outside of Hyper Beam. On Ryan's side, I think the key mon is going to be Marowak because Hector is still pretty weak to sort of the stone, earthquake, rock slide coverage.
Oh yeah.
And Marowak just does that. Like, let's say it has max rock, max ground, and it maxes, and those are the only 2 things it has. Hits Charizard, hits Aleki, it hits Duraludon, Persian exists, it hits Klefki, it hits Aerodactyl, Poltergeist is frail. It doesn't necessarily hit Vaporeon, like Max Quake is neutral into it, but Vaporeon can be bulky. And then the other things aren't as important. But that's why I think
Maractus, man. Don't sleep on Maractus.
I'm going to sleep on Maractus in a matchup where Moltres and Blaziken are 2 of the best offensive options.
I bet it still comes.
I mean, it could come, but I'm going to sleep on it this week. The Vaporeon, I think, for Hector is very important, with just as a way to pseudo wall the Marowak for a bit. And I do think a Yawn Scald set is going to be pretty good. I don't know if he goes that direction, but I do think as a way to blunt Ryan's momentum if he tries getting this Marowak going. But what do you think about this matchup?
So this is actually kind of a one-sided matchup, and I don't like saying that. But the mons I picked were the Persian, kind of for the same reasons you picked the Vaporeon with that fur coat ability. It's just going to be soaking up some of these physical hits, especially if Marowak's not able to tech a fighting move. And then on Ryan's side, I actually picked Raikou. So this was a key mon in his build last season, and he didn't bring it against me. I'm sure it's going to come sooner or later, but I think it actually could be unlocked here. So it's not taking a lot of damage from the Regieleki, but it's hitting the Charizard. I'm pretty sure it gets tools to hit Duraludon's very weak special defense. Persian doesn't have great special defense. Klefki can't Thunder Wave it. It hits the arrow, hits the Vaporeon, which is a key mon that you picked for him. It does get scald, so I just think this is going to be kind of a way that Raikou's going to be able to do a lot in the back, not so much as a lead, but Raikou's super interesting. I'm always excited to see it when Ryan brings it because Ryan lets it do so many different things. But Persian,
I think he gets Aurasphere.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. But Persian's annoying. A lot of Ryan's offense is coming, super effective offense is coming from physical mons like the Blaziken and the Haxorus, because Moltres isn't going to be doing too much with a dark move. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a kind of a bulkier kind of matchup, I think. On Hector's side, he's going to have a lot of bulk because even his fast mons aren't going to be taking hits. So this is an interesting matchup. I do think it's one-sided though.
Yeah, I do think this will be a pretty interesting matchup this week, but I think it favors Ryan just looking at the teams.
Yep. And that is the last one. So what is your key matchup of the week?
My key matchup this week is going to be Dina versus Jess. I think that this is sort of a must-win for both of them. In fact, I think both of the blue matches are must-win matches in order to try to stay competitive early in the season, because you don't want to have to rely on sweeping the out of conference to make it into the playoffs. But I think this one are two teams that are generally regarded as stronger in the league that have come out to not ideal starts to the season, some rough matchmaking early in the season for both of them. And that's why I think it's going to have a lot of long-term importance for playoffs and playoff seeding, which is why I think it's my match of the week. But what about for you?
So for me, it is actually going to be Johnny and Dark. We are going in our home divisions this week, but this one's is kind of important for both. So Dark King coming off 2 very good games, but playing 2 of the coaches that one is super inexperienced and one wasn't ranked very high. And I get it, Johnny wasn't ranked very high either. So if Johnny is able to come out of this one, it looks better for him than it does for Dark. If Dark wins it, he still beat someone who's very inexperienced in 2 of the lower ranked teams. So it's kind of super important for Dark to win this one. But it is also super important for Johnny to win because he doesn't want to slip into that 1 and 2 like we were talking about earlier. And I do think this is such a weird matchup that it is going to go either way. Johnny is super creative, and Dark King has a really good team, and he's been using it very well. So this is my pick for the week, and I really do think both games we picked this week are just going to be fantastic.
Agree with that as well. I think we generally get pretty good matchups up and down the league, and I don't expect this week to be any different.
No, but any final thoughts before we close out?
Not really at this point. I'm just excited to get another week under my belt, and then we'll be just about the halfway point of the divisional plays after week 3. I guess week 4 could be the halfway point, but pretty soon we're going to be getting into the power rankings. I don't think after this week, but after next. And I'm looking forward to seeing how those are going to shake out after a few more matches.
I am as well. So, yeah, we will see you guys in the next one. Peace.